going on, big dog? How you doing?
Man, we're doing great. How are you, man?
Just another beautiful, actually, today is a chilly day in Austin,
It
Texas.
is. But it's Friday, so always a good day
There it is,
whenever it's
TGIF,
Friday.
right?
TGIF, that's right.
Don't let Gary Vaynerchuk hear you say that, dude.
I know, he will not like
he'll
me.
F-bomb you
Yeah,
from here to
he'll slap
eternity.
me. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So, ladies and gentlemen, today on the Big B Mortgage Podcast, I am joined by my friend and co-worker, Mr. Brian Shapleigh.
What's going on, everyone?
Yeah. So, Brian, tell me about yourself, dude. Just to give you an idea, normally what we do is I love to hear your story. I want to talk about, how you came into not just Movement Mortgage, but really how you came into sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because no one's born into sales,
Right.
right? No one's born a salesperson. Everyone in every story prior to this interview, everyone has a different way that they got into it. So
Mm-hmm.
I love hearing about what drew you in, what were you doing before, what have been some challenges for you, what have you had to overcome in order to kind of follow this passion, things like that. I mean, does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, that works for sure.
Awesome, man. So with that, go ahead and share your story with us, bro.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and just share with your listeners, and definitely excited to be a part of this today. So as far as sort of my journey and career in sales, I think probably the first true sales job I had was in Austin, probably in 2009, somewhere around there. And I was doing like business to business, cold calling, selling office supplies. So like one of the more difficult things you can do, just straight up go in there and try to make the sale right then and there.
Office supplies.
Office
When
supplies.
you say office supplies, you mean like printer paper?
Yeah, printer paper, you get them hooked with the, 20% off on the printer paper for the day, and then you get them to, whatever else they need, whether that's pens, pencils, printers, like literally anything and everything.
Wow.
Yeah. So back in that time, I really didn't have any sort of mindset or philosophy of how to approach sales. One of the things I enjoyed about that job for the very, very short time that I was there is that every day we would go through personal development goals, doing affirmations, just getting pumped up and fired up for the day, which I really liked. Unfortunately, because I didn't really have a foundation, that didn't really translate into a great experience from the sales side. So I was there maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks, and it was just, I got to the point where I was like, this is not fun. I don't like rejection. I don't want to do this. So that was my first ever sales job.
You don't like rejection and you chose sales?
I know. Well, you'd think after, a little while, or you go in there knowing, yeah, people are going to tell me no, but when it's just no, 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 and you don't ever feel like you're getting results or any sort of traction,
Sure.
It was not fun. And I also realized that not all sales jobs are created equal. So you can have sales jobs that have a lot of rejection, but there's, I wasn't real passionate about, oh, hey, let me get you in on a 20% discount on paper that you can go buy
really
at
gotta
Walmart,
see this paper.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that had something to do with it too. I just wasn't real motivated to go sell the product.
Sure.
So there was a disconnect there. So that was my first sales job. And then from there, I actually went back into retail management. So I worked for Jimmy John's Freaky Fast. I'm sure
I love me some Jimmy.
you have Jimmy John's like 4 times a week, man.
Hey, dude, you ain't supposed to be giving that
I,
away,
well,
man.
I don't tell you what I'm not telling the people what you're getting. I'm just saying you're getting Jimmy John's. So
I'm getting all lettuce wraps, everybody.
yes, exactly, the unwitches. Yeah. So yeah, I actually worked for Jimmy John's from 2009 until 2015 and worked my way up from a driver, eventually went to management training, was an assistant manager, and then was a general manager for the Cedar Park store.
Wow.
For quite a while. And so I did that, and as you can probably imagine, working 60 hours a week, managing minimum wage employees, after a couple years, it's pretty easy to get burned out on that. And especially I was in a position where I was as high as I could go. And so
you would hit the ceiling.
I'd hit the ceiling. Yeah, absolutely. So I literally got to a place where I was telling people I will pretty much take anything but what I'm doing now. And again, it wasn't to knock Jimmy John's. It's just you're burned out. You got to move on. So
Right.
I just put some feelers out there and eventually had a friend of a friend who knew a mortgage broker here in town. And so that's kind of how I started my journey back into sales and specifically into mortgages.
Wow.
So I literally, it was 100% commission. It was phone sales, focusing in the VA refinance niche a couple years ago when refinances were still booming, and I barely knew what a mortgage was. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a step of faith and go with it. And so that's what I did.
Wow. So just no experience. You just jumped in the water.
Yeah, just jumped in the water. And I mean, one of the things that was to my benefit specifically with the phone sales is that you could do a lot more scripts with phone sales. Yeah, you still had to overcome objections, but your initial pitch, if you will, was going to be very similar, especially with the type of product that we were doing. And I had a background previous to mortgages and sales and Jimmy John's in television news. So I was very used to reading a script, being very professional on the phone.
That's right. I have seen your clips.
Yes. So I am on the internet somewhere. And so, yeah, that experience really helped me as far as being able to at least put off a professional approach and knowing that once I got that script down, my nerves were I was a lot less rattled because there wasn't as much pressure because I was using some of the skills that I had already developed to kind of translate that into mortgages.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I saw you. I remember you showed me a couple of your clips from when you were, what was it, like an on-the-scene reporter or something like that?
Yeah, so I
go out to like the train, car accidents and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was your typical news reporter. So anything that you'd see here on Austin or any of your local TV stations, I mean, that was me. It was an ABC affiliate, KJCT News 8 in Grand Junction, Colorado. So I did that for about 2 years before I came to Austin in 2008.
Wow. What brought you to Austin?
Honestly, just a wing and a prayer, to be honest. I had really just thought about where I wanted to go and meditated on it. And I had heard about Austin, knew about Austin, but really didn't know a whole lot about it. I did a little bit of research, but it was really interesting. Long story short, in this small town in western Colorado of about 50,000 people, I kept running into people that had these connections to Austin. And one of my friends at the time, I was talking with him and kind of just expressed this desire to want to just take a leap of faith and just go somewhere new and just have another adventure. And he said, well, then you should move to Austin. And what was funny about that is I had never actually told him that I wanted to move to Austin or that I was even thinking about Austin. He had never been to Austin, Texas. So I have no idea. He had never been to Austin. To this day, I have no idea why that came out of his mouth. But that was pretty much the catalyst for me to say, okay, I'm going to take this as a sign. And so in 2008, I literally picked up everything from western Colorado and drove down here. No friends, no job, barely knew the guy I was staying with, and started building my life.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because I'm a pretty conservative guy, and so the weird thing is that in the major decisions in my life, going to school, whether it be high school or college, or moving out to western Colorado where I didn't know anyone, or coming to Austin, Texas, or getting into the mortgage industry, I found that the biggest risks that I've taken have been the biggest rewards up until that point. So while I live my day-to-day life fairly conservatively as far as, risks and things like that, the biggest decisions I've made have,
it's
equal
funny
the biggest
how
reward.
It's funny how, because just what you said, right? The biggest rewards have come from the biggest risk, right? That's like a classic cliche,
right?
No risk, no reward. Blah blah blah. Life is on the other side of fear,
right?
And it's funny, even though I know a lot of people who, because I'll be honest, man, I love cliches, right? I don't have to create them. I just have to remember them. And if it's one that sticks with me, it's great. But you have these people, it's like, oh my god, that is such a cliche,
right?
So what, dude? If it's true, it's true, right?
Right. There's always some truth in that.
Yeah, and so for you, I think it's awesome that, dang. But, to know you is to know that, yeah, you seem like the guy who you think before you act.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, definitely.
Right, for sure.
Act. And to hear that it's like, it was a wing and a prayer. I didn't really know the dude I was going to be living with. And I was like, wait, what?
Right.
Dude.
Yeah, I guess they're...
You could have been on like a cold case show.
I know. I guess they're, it is funny when you look back at it now. I mean, I probably would say it was more of a calculated risk. I did do more research, but, there was way more unknowns than there were knowns. And so I just went off what I knew based on what I could think about and prepare for. But then you get here and you got to figure it out.
You do it.
Right.
You just make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Keyword.
Exactly. Make it happen.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with you, though, as far as jumping into new experiences, kind of not always prepared.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, me and my wife, we were living down in the Rio Grande Valley, and she grew up down there. I grew up in Laredo, moved to the valley to be with her. But that's like a whole other podcast. But the point being is, we started our family, and so we had our daughter, and we wanted to raise our daughter in more of a kind of a diverse environment. Right? Not that I have anything against down there, the culture.
Sure.
I love the Hispanic culture, dude. I grew up in it. But like, we wanted to expose her to more, to see a bigger picture. Right?
Sure.
So we literally moved to we started by moving to San Antonio. But just like you said, we had zero, we didn't really have a plan.
Right.
It was just, can we find a place? Yes. Can I get a job? Yes. Do we have some money put away to do this? Yes. Okay, good. We're gone.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And like you said, you adapt, man. And so what was the adaptation like for you? Because obviously, and I think you mentioned this, maybe not, but you didn't get into the mortgage business till you were in Austin. Right? You did the Jimmy John thing first, which in itself to me is impressive, because if you can go from the driver to the GM, dude, that's like a success story, right?
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So what was the acclimation like? I mean, was there a lot of sleepless nights at first? Oh my God, what did I do?
Sure. Honestly, there really wasn't, because I had so many experiences before I left that I felt confirmed that I was supposed to go down there, that once I made that decision, I really didn't question whether or not it was the right move. And obviously I can look over the totality of the last, what has it been, 2008, so almost 10 years,
right,
and know that it was a good decision, and know that there were ups and downs along the way. But I really didn't have an issue as far as acclimating. I mean, I got here and right away I got a job. I think I served tables for a couple weeks. And actually, this was one of the other parts of my story that confirmed it. And this is why I really didn't have any sleepless nights, because I knew I was going to be taken care of. But before I left, and being in the media industry, I wanted to stay in the media industry, and I knew Austin had some background in that.
Sure.
And so a little bit. So I wanted to get into video production, because that was something that I was passionate about. And so lo and behold, when I moved here, I am talking with my roommate, and he's telling me about the church that he goes to. And lo and behold, it's a church that was actually recommended to me by the small church that I went to in Grand Junction. So there's one connection that, confirms I'm supposed to be here. And he says, well, I really want to introduce you to one of the lead pastors. His name was Rick Schertz. So the second week I'm here, I get introduced to Rick Schertz, and he says, oh, what do you do? I say, well, I'm serving tables right now, but I have a background in, television news, and I want to get into video production. He says, oh, hey, well, that's funny, because we have this giant 36 video project that we need to hire a contractor for, so we can do these spiritual development videos. So would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. So, within 2 weeks, I am at a church that was recommended to me, so I know I'm in a good place spiritually. Also, I then get a job through the one person that I know in Austin, which was obviously a very loose connection, because it was just a guy that I, met online who had a place to stay.
Right.
And from that, I get a job doing something that not only am I passionate about, video production, but also, being able to help people grow spiritually through the work that I'm doing. So it just all around within the first couple weeks. Well, why would you have a sleepless night? I mean, how can you not have a confirmation once stuff like that starts happening?
Well, you're a man of faith, obviously, right? And when you're a person of faith, I think there's also a kind of an added feeling of it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's, yes, I had the belief and confidence in myself, but because I believe in God and because I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, I know that he's going to be guiding me. And so I make the decision, ask him to lead me. And, it's not like I hear his voice, audibly. And these types of things don't happen to me every day. But I can know, especially after the first couple weeks of being here, that there was no denying the fact that he had led me here.
That's awesome, man.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, something else that I've always enjoyed talking to you about, this is something that I've kind of come into, I guess you could say. You've been into this a lot longer than I have, and that is the desire to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like the desire to seek out the knowledge of, whether it's through reading or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk to you about that as well. Like, tell me about, first off, you told me, I think you gave me a statistic of how many books you've read.
Mm-hmm.
How many books have you read?
Well, I mean, it's not a giant number by any means, but I'd probably say since 2012, I'd probably say it's maybe around 100, somewhere in there.
See, to me, that's a giant number.
Yeah.
For other people who may or may not be listening to this, that may not be, but for me, that's like, good God.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you do 100 books? I don't care if it's been since 2012.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is just the idea of, small actions over time lead to momentum and giant results. And so that's a philosophy that I really like to live my life by, and given my personality of being a little bit more conservative, but being very all about the details and focusing on a plan, I feel like that philosophy very much benefits me just from a personal standpoint. But when you look at how that has played out in my life and how it can play out in anyone's life is pretty simple when it comes to reading books. Those, 80 to 100 books that I've read comes from reading about 15 to 20 minutes a day. So you're not talking about, that's it. You're not talking about a whole lot of time. If you can carve out 15 to 20 minutes a day, you can read 20 to 25 books in a year.
Oh, okay.
If you read at my speed, I mean, I'm just going off of the personal statistics, but I'm not a fast reader. So if, again, 20 minutes a day, you're reading whatever, 10, 15 pages, you can plow through a couple books a month.
Well, I interviewed a mutual friend of ours the other day, Mr. Eddie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he was telling me, and I joked with him about it on the podcast because, like, I think I was on like my third or fourth cup of coffee, right? And I asked him, I was like, hey man, you want some coffee? He's like, nope, I've had my 2 cups, I'm good.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, you only do 2 cups? He goes, yep, one at 6, one at blah.
Yeah.
I'm like, you schedule coffee?
Right.
And it kind of became this little thing that I poked at him about.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling me though, like, he shared it on the podcast. It's like he'll get up, he'll have his cup, but then it's like he spends time before everybody else gets up. And I guess that's like his 20 minutes or 30 minutes that he'll read and take notes and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And so I tried that this morning.
How'd that go?
It was rough.
Ripping the Band-Aid off the first day.
Man, I feel like I should have chugged an energy shot before I did it. Because, I mean, it takes usually about a cup and a half for me to really get
going, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's a telltale sign that I need to cut back on the caffeine. That probably ain't going to happen.
Sure.
But what I will say is that I can see where that could be beneficial. Because, yeah, you do have that time. And what are you going to do? Watch the news?
Right. Right.
No disrespect to you, the former news person, but it's
yeah.
bad.
Well, no, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm especially since learning about personal development. Well, yeah, no, I mean, this was before kind of my passion for personal development was really kind of awakened and ignited, and where I started doing it consistently. So I was kind of clueless to everything, but honestly, it's funny to see where I was, 2006 to 2008 to where I'm at now, where, I mean, a place where I need to start growing personally more is I get viscerally emotionally angry just when I hear the news on in the background in my house, because it's so negative. It really doesn't have any bearing on any of our lives, and it promotes so much fear. And when you do that every day, you can easily live in a constant state of fear. I mean, we live in Austin, Texas. I live in a super safe neighborhood, yet I watch the news and now I got to lock my doors. I get security systems and I got to get guns and all this. And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong and that you don't have the right to protect yourself, but where is that right that you're exercising coming from? It's probably coming from the fact that you're living in so much fear, you don't even realize it. But it's just, again, I could go on an entire soapbox for this, and we could talk for 45 minutes just on my anger about that. But
I can relate to that because, I mean, and again, I haven't banned the news by any stretch. Like,
right.
Like I still catch myself, but even then, I'll be honest, when I watch it, and I'm not trying to sit here and cry fake news and all that stuff, but for me, it's just more like it's more of an eye roll.
Right. It's pretty ridiculous.
Did something happen to a celebrity?
Right.
Dear God, like no, like I do not need to eat up another hour with this.
Right.
But on the same note, like there is something to be said for staying informed.
Sure.
It's just where do you
draw the line? Well, I mean, my philosophy, again, not to harp on it too much, my personal philosophy is that if it gets bad enough, someone will let me know.
Sure.
That's kind of the news that I have to know about.
If there's a zombie apocalypse, you're going to figure it out pretty quick.
Right. Exactly. I'll figure it out, and we'll kind of take one step at a time. But, I mean, most of the stuff it doesn't really have a bearing on my life. So why should I care? Why should I worry about it? And why should I let that control me? Yeah. That's the biggest thing. And that kind of goes back to the whole thing of, like, what do you put in your mind?
Fear, though, doesn't
right.
It?
Oh, absolutely.
And fear, especially in sales, man, fear is the biggest thing you're going to fight every day.
Absolutely. And you're going to have to fight fear just with yourself. So being able to put other stuff in your mind that's going to, exacerbate that, I mean, that's something that I would personally stay away from, even if I wasn't in sales.
Sure. Well, it makes sense. So tell me about what you do. What do you like to do when you're not here?
Yeah, so when I'm not here, besides read, yes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes a day, every day, for sure. I guess I take off Sundays, just,
You were doing a video on Fridays, weren't you?
I was doing a video on Fridays.
I really enjoyed those videos.
I know you are probably my biggest fan, which
I am.
I appreciate because it always keeps me in the back of my mind saying, okay, I have to get back on that. And I think when I was doing it, I enjoyed it. It's part of my passion to renew people's mind and help others for sure. And I lacked the consistency because I felt like I wasn't sure why I was doing it. And I know I should be more like, well, I'm just doing it to help people, but I also know that I want to make sure that my time is being spent in a very intentional way. And so I've kind of gone back to the drawing board, and I have an inkling that I'm going to be starting those back up consistently again through kind of the other stuff that I'm doing on the side, which one of my passions is really just growing my website and growing my brand at this point. And brianshapleigh.com is still in the works. Everything's there. You can still interact with it. It's just not consistently putting out content because I'm still working on some free training, and I'll be coming out with some personal development programs that I think can definitely benefit people. But
Nice.
That is definitely a passion. When I get home after I hang out with my wife and my son, I mean, I'm upstairs, I finish my reading, and I start thinking and working on, my current business.
Right.
And so that's really what I'm passionate about. That's honestly what takes up the majority of my free time, is just working on how can I get this to a point where I can get content out to people, where I can build my brand. And I'm going to make money through this. And so that's a way that I can provide and support my family.
So what is it going to be? I mean, you're going to be helping people in what way?
Yeah, so the tagline for my website, brianshapleigh.com, is teaching average guys not to be average. So really what that looks like,
Nice.
I like the tagline. It works. So, I mean, really it's just helping, someone that maybe hasn't put in place some of those personal development practices or wants to grow. I mean, everyone wants to grow. They may not realize it, but we're goal-seeking mechanisms. So, just by our very nature, we're going to want to put forth goals. We're going to want to be our best. We're going to want to live to our full potential. And so really my goal is to take, someone or some guy that would maybe consider themselves average. Hey, maybe he's got a job, a wife, a kid, he's pretty busy, has a mortgage, couple car payments, whatever that is. kind of take that general mold and be able to give him some, practical tools and advice of how to grow himself to be better, whether it's for his family or for his job or just for himself. And so that's kind of going to be my approach as far as being able to help people. So it's just giving out general personal development, success principles that people can start to implement and live by in their daily lives.
See, I dig that, though, man. Chasing that passion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I feel like that's one of my purposes, is to renew minds for the glory of God. And so to be able to give people information that I know 95% of people don't know about, let alone are ever going to read about, and it can help them, I definitely feel like that could be beneficial.
I think it's awesome, man.
Well,
so
thank you.
You said the website's up. You haven't reached that point where you're putting out consistent content.
Right. So people can go and interact with the website. I designed it myself, so you can sign up for my free training, which I'm going to have out at the end of the month. It's going to be basically showing people 7 steps of how they can start to become above average. So I'm going to give some principles and some practices. I'm going to give out some really easy checklists and tools and resources that people can use just to start taking some of those initial steps. And then from there, I'm going to come out with my first course, which will be Above Average Morning, which is going to be teaching average guys how to not be average in the morning. So, whether it's only having that 1 cup of coffee or being able to have, an hour of your morning, the first hour, be dedicated to personal growth.
I am below average until after that.
Well, until those 2 cups of coffee, right?
Yeah, give me that 2 cups. And okay, I can become extraordinary.
Absolutely. So that'll kind of be the first course that I come out with, and then I'm going to be designing I call it above average lifestyle course, which is going to be taking a lot of the principles that are in the free training, combining it with the above average morning, and then building that out so that you can develop habits and practices to have basically an above average life.
Wow. Dude,
it's going to be awesome, man. It's going to be awesome.
You put me on the mailing list, baby.
I will, for sure.
Go back down there and start doing those videos on Fridays, man.
I will.
Some good stuff.
I will. It will happen, I promise. I can't commit to a date, but I can commit to it will happen.
Yeah. So what else you want to tell me about, brother? What else you got going on?
Man, honestly, that's a lot of what it is. One of the cool things that I'm finding through, Movement Mortgage specifically, is just being able to tap into some of my other gifts and talents that maybe whether or not I realize them or not, just being able to start seeing those and using those to serve other people in specifically the Movement Mortgage context. So as you know, I teamed up with Randy, and we're working together as a team. And it's interesting to see the dynamics between me and Randy. One, because we're very different people, but also how our gifts and strengths play off each other. And one of my strengths is really being able to think through and develop systems and processes and be able to do it in a very efficient way. And that was one of the reasons why I could stay at Jimmy John's as long as I did, and why I was successful at Jimmy John's, is because they're very systematic and very systematized to get predictable results. And so while I didn't actually get to create the system in Jimmy John's, being able to kind of utilize an environment that's very structured and very systematic to get those predictable results, I've actually been able to translate that to the work that me and Randy are doing. And Randy is not really a details guy. He's definitely has the ability to run systems, but to be able to think through what is the best way as far as efficiency of the system. So it's not just I'm going to do a whole bunch of action and I'll screw up, but then I'll fix it with a whole bunch of action. I can kind of take myself and my mind and what I can do and go, okay, cool. We want a lot of action. That's good, but let's take all your action that you're doing and all the action I'm doing and put it in the most efficient way possible, so that not only do you minimize mistakes, but you get a lot more done. You get a lot more results in a shorter amount of time.
Wow. Yeah. Randy's definitely a higher D, just like I am, right?
Absolutely.
By high D, we're talking about disc results and everything else.
Very action oriented, very
like
direct.
Yes,
we can.
Whole nother
podcast for sure.
Yeah, but I'm the guy who's like, okay, I want to do this. We're going to do this and go. You
right.
know? And so I think Randy has that tendency to be that way as well. So it's great to be able to have that counterbalance, which is something that I'm kind of working on getting myself, because right now I personally have to police myself on some of those things.
Right.
And I'm not always good at that.
Right. Absolutely.
I know I've thrown, Brian, because Brian's here in the office that I office out of, and I can tell you I've probably thrown more harebrained ideas at Brian. Like, hey, man, I want to do this. And then he's like, cool, yeah, figure that out. Let me know how that goes.
Yeah, it's you were at about a mile a minute every other day there for a couple weeks, I think, before you settled on the podcast idea.
Yeah,
which has been great. I mean, you've been very consistent, and I know you're getting a lot of guests. So
it's fun, man. It's fun because through this, I'm able to tell stories like yours.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Absolutely.
And to me, that's the part. And I didn't start that way, but after the first few recordings of the episodes, where it just kind of like the conversation just kind of went there.
Mm-hmm.
As far as learning about people, I realized like this is where I want to go with it.
Yeah.
You know, because everyone has a story, dude,
Mm-hmm.
and the stories are great. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how we overcome the challenges to get where we want to be and things like that. I mean, look at you. You know, you came here on a wing and a prayer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a plan. You know, and fast forward, you know, you had success with one of your jobs, tremendous success in my opinion, and now you're doing you're doing your thing here in the mortgage business,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have another vision, and you're executing a vision. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely appreciate it, and I think, I mean, yeah, it's just really about patience and realizing that where you are now is not where you're going to be forever, and being able to look back in certain seasons of your life and come to the realization that you knew that's where you're supposed to be. You may not have liked that. Like, I didn't like driving for 2 years, right? I did
Right.
that for 2 years knowing that I had way more potential. But now that I look at it and see everything that I've gone through and what I'm using as far as that experience to build upon, it's totally it's totally worth it. So I think for anyone that's out there that may be in a situation where they feel like, you know, oh man, like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Like, just continue to press forward, because there will be a time eventually where you can look back and know that there are those lessons there for you to learn. So try to take that and keep that in perspective, because it's an opportunity for you to learn and grow.
Dude, yes. And with that, I think you just gave me the perfect segue to conclude. That was awesome.
Awesome.
That was awesome. Hey,
Glad I could help.
So real quick before I say goodbye to everybody, gotta have you back on, man. When are you gonna have that website up and running?
I will. I'll have the free training out probably by the end of the month, so it's January 2018. So that should be up. Once that comes out, then maybe we can do another one next month or two.
And do another one, man.
Yeah.
Maybe you can maybe we can have like a little class thing going on.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to just kind of tell
the topic
people
that you're talking about on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Just deliver it to the people.
Yeah.
All 6 of my listeners. It'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe
Hi,
you'll have
Mom.
7 by that time, for sure. Hey, as
go.
long as you can help one person, it's worth it, right?
That's all it's about.
So,
right there.
absolutely. But yeah, we can totally do that.
Well, I appreciate you coming in today, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Bobby.
All right.
Appreciate it.
You bet. Hey, man. Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Big Blue Mortgage Podcast. Remember to like and share. Apparently, that's something I haven't been pestering you guys to do. So prepare for that to start. But hope you found a nugget. Hope you found something value of this in this episode. And I'll see you on the next one, man. Bye-bye.